So thank you so much for asking us to share some of our experiences with Padlet today. Just before we get going, so we have this as information, I'm going to send our abstract through the chat so that it's there. We looked at it when we met last week to make sure we're actually going to talk about what we said we were going to talk about. So our abstract is there for you to consult if you need to. I first learned about Padlet in March when everything changed for us. And I looked into it and thought it looked like a pretty good platform. And I think I introduced it in one class and I felt like the students were just already learning so many new things and were so overwhelmed that I didn't pursue it in the spring when we were 100% remote. But I did bring it back in August. And I'm glad I have, because my students have adapted really easily to Padlet. And I've even heard them talking to each other saying things like, Padlet's working really well for this class. So that tells me that it's a simple and streamlined tool that that I'm using now, and I think I will carry it back into the classroom when I'm full-time in the classroom again. I have used Padlet similar to a chalkboard in the classroom. So it's like our chalkboard when we are having Zoom college. I've used it a lot for collaboration in class. And then when I do have a student who misses class, I'm able to tell them to first consult our Padlet from that day, which I always post on Moodle before class starts even. So they can consult that, and then we can sit down and talk about what they've missed. So it does really give them some responsibility in catching up. And so it's less spoon feeding, so they can come to me and say, okay, I looked at the Padlet. I have no idea what that first column, what you're talking about, but I did understand the second and third column. So that's how I've used it so far. And I also have told students that I consider their contributions on Padlet to be participation. So students have the option of having an anonymous account or of having their name linked to the account. No requirement either way for me, but it's one way that I can consider participation in every single student. I think they just want to know anyway who's saying what, and they want their voices to be heard. So that's how I've used it so far. What we're going to do is I'm going to show a Padlet a way that I've used it that's worked really well. Jennifer is going to show a Padlet that's worked well for her. Then I'm going to show one that has not worked well. And Jennifer's going to do the same thing. And then really quickly, the last few minutes, we're going to make a Padlet together and everyone's going to get a chance to post one thing on the Padlet. So that's how we have organized our time together today. I'm going to go ahead and share with you a Padlet and explain how I used it. So in January, I taught an advanced French course on memoirs. And of course, memoirs fall in a very broad category of life writing. There's no term for it in French, so we use the English term for it. On the very first day of class, we were talking about this concept of life writing, and I prepared this Padlet to propose different ideas of things that could fall in this genre. So I did things like autobiography. Here you have a journal or a diary. Could letters be considered life writing? And I tried to travel journals, and I tried to throw some ones out there like Twitter. I really wanted to kind of get them going and think about what life writing may or may not be. Could a blog be life writing? So I started with this Padlet, and then in pairs, they needed to go through and comment. So yes, Madeline says, diaries are life writing because it's part of life. And then Meg said, well, Sophia and we think that sometimes a diary could be life writing. There's the public level, the intention of the author to be published, to consider. So they had about 20 minutes in their little breakout rooms to go through, and they did not have to comment on everything I'd posted. but to go through and really think about like what could life writing entail, because there isn't a fixed definition, and we can really think about what we consider to be life writing. I did also ask them to put up some different ideas. So songs, would songs be considered life writing? So they had to make their own contributions to the discussion. And Clarity said, yes, Taylor Swift is a good example of songs and life writing. And I said, could Instagram be life writing? And no one said anything about it. So that worked really well for that first day of class. And then I did think on the last day of center term to go back, and then we could think about what we said the first day, how we saw life writing the first day, and then to think about how our thoughts had evolved in the 3 weeks. So that's an example. It's probably my best example of Padlet so far. I have a Padlet most days when I'm on Zoom. And for each class that I teach, I always keep the same background so that they associate my class with that specific background. And then it's different for each class. So that's an example that's worked well for me. Maybe Jennifer could go, and if there's any little questions to throw in, then we can definitely address those.
Okay, so you can see I have a ton of Padlets. So one of the ones that I like is, hang on, is, where is it? Here we go. I had, my students are doing recorded presentations, and the first round of presentations, they're supposed to get a review from a classmate. Everybody is supposed to receive a review, and everybody's supposed to provide a review. And I was going to have them just figure out how to deal with the reviews on their own. And somebody's like, just put it on Padlet, and we'll be able to review them from Padlet. And so I was like, okay, when you review it, like put a thumbs up so we know that that one is getting reviewed. So there's a lot of videos here from all of my students. And then I didn't mostly watch this set of videos. I looked at this set of videos where they don't show up unless I approve it. And so I can tell if it's already been watched. And so if I approve it, then actually I transferred it to a Padlet that was a portfolio for that student. So you can see I have a whole bunch of portfolios. Each student has their own, and I just let Padlet come up with its own background. And so that means 3 people have the skateboard background, but whatever, nobody has made any comments about the different backgrounds, and I find them visually interesting. So I use the Padlets not during class, or mostly not during class, but asynchronously. So the students post to them outside of class for homework. One time, are we ready to switch gears and talk about things that can be overwhelming? Something's in the chat. Yeah, it can be used as an e-portfolio. Is that awesome or what? So here you can see somebody's portfolio. It's got one thing on it. But as the semester goes, here I'll show you how you put things on those portfolios. So I'm on this show you no video, and I could be like, oh, I could copy this or transfer this to another post. So when I approve it, I can transfer it to their video. And then when they say, yes, you could share it with my classmates, then I can copy it to the shared one. So all of these have been approved, and they get a token for sharing. So like I think it's really cool that they're going to have portfolios. Nobody's going to see them except whoever they give the link to. Katie Ann, you have a question?
Yeah, so my students are doing their artifacts. I was wondering if, and they keep asking, are we going to get to see each other's artifacts? This would be a good way to do that. If they want to share it, it's the kind of thing where I don't want to force them to share them, but if they want to share them, we could dump them all onto one of these. Is that
That is
what
correct.
you're thinking?
Cool. If you have the free service, you can have a maximum of 3 Padlets. As you can tell, I have way more than that, so I pay because I figured it was worth it.
What's it cost?
If you pay by the month, it's $10 a month. If you pay by the year, it's $8 a month. So like, I don't know, $100 or something.
Okay, thank you.
Are we ready to switch to talk about something that was overwhelming? Okay, so I tried to do question formulation technique and have 16 students in one section and 12 in the other. And I'm like, okay, go to the Padlet, post your questions, and they can post anonymously. And then when you have posts from 16 students, that's too many. And I was overstimulated, and I was like, okay, and I've never done question formulation technique with my class again, because it worked okay in the fall when I had 9 students, but like this was so I went back and I answered all their questions, not during class. And so that's the other thing I like about Padlets. I show them, I use them for warm-ups. And so you can see the warm-up. For this day, I was asking, like, tell me some things and then what did you find interesting? That's a bad way to do it. What did you find interesting? It is better to do it like, put a post for what you find interesting, and then they can have a conversation. And so like, I have learned some bad things. Don't do it that way. What did you find confusing? That's a bad way to ask it. Post separately what you found confusing, because then they can have a conversation. They can upvote it. This was confusing. This was whatever. And so conversations. And so my students, actually, I asked them, they said, we want to have Slack. I said, well, do you want to just do the reading warm-ups in Slack? They were like, no, we like Padlet. And so I'm like, okay, the reading warm-ups will stay in Padlet. And so I like it, but sometimes it's unwieldy when there's 28 people commenting to a question. Everything is up. Yes.
Sorry, Jennifer, that was sort of an aside, but I just got out of a bunch of reflections and I regret that as a prompt, talk about something interesting, because they're like, this was interesting. And that's like, they just keep saying the word interesting. And so I have to figure out how to push them into why, tell me what, tell me how. Yeah, So
Sadi asked the students have to pay. So actually, I pay for it because I built it, and so I own it. And if they wanted to own it themselves, they can have 3 for free. But I wanted them to, like, they were like, oh my gosh, I'll have a portfolio. I'm like, you could share the URL with your parents. They'll be excited. They could put it on their fridge.
So they're allowed to see more than 3 of the categories that you have set up? Like, they're not limited in seeing just the 3?
Oh no, they can see, like, you can only own your own, but you can look at other people's. You can go to a gallery and like find cool things. And so there's a lot of really awesome ideas of, like, I'm participating in a conference that was yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Like I haven't been there, but because I'm busy, but they have a poster session and they're doing it with Padlet. And I'll send you the URL if you want to look at it. It's awesome. I'm like, this is a great way to do a poster session.
This is good to know, because I'm in the UGR committee. I will mention this, and I do think that it might be useful, because we've been deliberating how are we going to do posters for RICE. It would be great to see an example on how to do it on Padlet.
I will post the link in the chat.
It might also be nice to know if there's an option for an institutional membership and what that would entail. It might be simple, so that's really cool.
Is there an option to download the Padlet? I know that sounds ridiculous because it's online, but I mean, Like for
Robin
offline
did
use?
that in her class this summer. You can
Oh.
download it as a PDF.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I don't know what would happen if it's a video. Like, I don't know if those links would stay live in the PDF or if it would just be an image of what you see when you look at the Padlet, but that would be easy to test. You can download it though. So I have to go deal with my.
So is the so those little note cards that show up on the screen of your Padlet, is the only way to comment on those like just a little textual comment? Or if someone wanted to do a video response or some other, how do you go inside? Like, can you show me maybe the warm-up thing or one of the Padlets again, and then is there a way to delve deeper into each little note card that you see?
So I think the only way to have responses on the warm-ups is to type comments here.
So that's all there is on those little, I'm calling them note cards. I don't know what the proper lingo is for those, but so there's nothing deeper. It's just, that's it right there. And you're typing your comments, and that's that.
But when you post a new thing, like see, I hit post, you can post YouTubes, you can post photographs, you can post link to web pages. So the comments can only be one thing, but the posts can be anything.
Okay.
Audio clips, video clips.
Is there any way to organize what's on that broad page?
Yes, Allison's good at that.
Okay.
However you want. And there's, I think I can quickly show you my unruly and really difficult example. And I have many of them, but I'm just going to show you one. But we're also going to walk through some different options of making them. And there's a lot of possibility for organizing them. So depending on how you visualize a Padlet, I think that you could make comments just a new post. And then you could do the video, or you could add a link or whatever. So I think that there's a, kind of like I said at the beginning, I'm not using it as well as I could or should. But I think there's just depending on what you're teaching and what you want to use it for. I think that you could definitely do some sort of a video response, or have students do a video response. Yeah, you can use a map like Sati said, which is awesome. I'm going to just quickly show you my bad Padlet. So I am on, this is my dashboard. And my students did a reading that was short, but it was pretty complicated in French. The vocabulary was hard. So what I wanted them to do in pairs, there's 22 students in this class, so it's big for a French class. And so in the essay, I said, I want them to have one category that said, the essay is about X. And so they were supposed to write their answers here. And then I wanted one category that said, we liked. So one thing they liked about it. And then my last category was, we don't understand X. So it just was out of control for me. And if it was hard for me to deal with, I can't imagine how they felt trying to deal with it and look at it. So they didn't complain because they're super polite. But I feel really stressed out when I look at this. And I have other Padlets that have the same issue. So if I had gone to the dashboard, this is not wanting to work. Okay, so I go to the dash. I have a little bit of a delay in my Padlet for some reason, but this is where, if you're going to build a Padlet, you go to padlet.com, and they have all these different formats that are possible. I usually use Canvas because it's just blank and you can put the little box, or as Jason was calling them, the little cards, wherever you want to put them. And you can organize them however you want. And they're easy to move around. If you want something super, aligned, the shelf can be good. There's a title for each column. So that's a possibility. And I haven't used all of these. The timeline can be fabulous if you're doing anything chronological. I used a timeline. Oh, last week, we'll just quickly look at it. And it worked really well for talking about colonialism in Africa, at least French colonialism. So, I've got a picture, and you put the link, I put the link to the image in the comments. And then this worked really well for the, 15-minute lecture that I gave them. And it was nice having that progression. And then the images incorporated when it was, when it was appropriate. So it takes a little bit of kind of fine tuning and thinking about, what do I really want to do with this? And do I need it? I mean, sometimes you just need to discuss, like today, all we did was talk. And I said, I'm not going to talk as much as usual. I really want to hear what you have to say. There was no need. It would not have enhanced anything about class today. So I think my goal in COVID has been keeping it as streamlined and as clear as possible for them. Sometimes it works. But as you saw with that one example, it did not work. My objective was not met. So if we want to discuss a little bit before we make a Padlet and just see how easy it is, that's fine with me. I don't know what Jennifer thinks.
Yeah, let people ask questions or make comments or tell us about their ideas.
Yeah.
Maps, timelines, I haven't used them, but I can imagine they would be really good for some of your classes.
Yeah. The link that Jennifer sent from her conference, I think they used the timeline function. So and I thought, oh, that's really smart. You don't have to just use it for a timeline. so it was cool to see that.
And it's cool if you watch YouTube videos, if you embed them, then they don't see the whole YouTube interface with all of the ads and other comments and stuff. It's really, so you can use the Padlet thing that's a little bit broader and have more space. And I think there's a lot of nice things about it.
Allison, it sounded like you used the timeline to kind of organize your, lecture or lead your class. Have you also used it as an interactive piece with them? Like where they interact with the timeline and add things?
In January, I had a timeline. We had a book that had a lot of dates, and each chapter was like organized by dates. So I put it up on the timeline, and it was just there as a resource for them. And we added a little bit of comments here and there. So it was not extensive and it was not mandatory by any means, but it was an option. I think Padlet is fabulous to collaborate in class. It has worked so well and it's so easy to use. The students need about half a class period to kind of get the hang of it. And then they're like, and you can just say, why don't, and this especially, for someone like Sati who teaches language, and say, you ask this question and you say, well, find an image that is evocative of your answer. So they're writing and then they have the image. It's really good because a lot of times in a language class, you're gonna have different levels of comprehension, or sometimes in a language, there's just one word you don't know, and then you're kind of stuck. So I think that, like every once in a while, like, incorporating an image. I have a friend who teaches Italian at Notre Dame, and she'll have them like put a music video up. I have to ask her to see him, but she's doing more links with YouTube and things like that, and having them do it. And then in January, one time I had my students, they had to create their own Padlet in their group of 3. And at first they thought they were a little scared, but giving them that responsibility and, not just commenting or adding to a Padlet I had created. So they were responsible for the creation of it. It worked well. And I only did it once, but I would definitely do it again to have them see what it's like to visualize an idea, and then to how am I going to put an image with the words in my second or third or fourth language. So that's good too. That's a possibility I'd like to explore a little bit more in the future.
I asked a question a little while back and I just was gonna ask Jennifer to clarify. You said it worked better when you told them to post something interesting as opposed to say something or talk about something. What's the difference between, yeah, what's the difference?
So I give them the reading warm-up questions and then they answer them in comments on my post, on my little card. And I'm like, tell me what's confusing. And then they answer it there. And then tell me what's interesting. And like, it's better to say, post what's interesting. And then like, if they're interested in brain waves, then they have a discussion about brain waves. If they're interested in gravity, then they have a separate discussion about gravity. And I don't have posts about brain waves and gravity together in the same string.
Oh, so they're starting a new card, as Jason says. Okay, that's what you mean by that. All right, that was my question.
And then they can't put thumbs up or thumbs down on a comment to a card, but they can put thumbs up or thumbs down on the separate cards. Or you can use hearts or stars or whatever you like, and you can let them be anonymous or you can let them be identified, and you can you can let them get posted immediately or have to get approved. And so it's handy to have so many options. But my students understand it, because the one I posted yesterday, somebody's like, dude, we can't comment on your questions. We can't answer them. And I'm like, oh. And so then I fixed it. You can answer them now.
We could go through and do one together and have you all make a comment. I had thought of just preparing one and then just sharing it with you, but I may as well just walk you through it to see how simple it is. So I'm going to go to make a Padlet up here. And then I use Canvas the most, so we'll just go ahead and look at that format. And then welcome to your beautiful new Padlet. They always give it a title, my shiny Padlet. So we will call it ice storms. A description. We don't need a description. So we have a lot of options for wallpaper. We'll look at a texture and a pattern, and we'll say bricks.
It looks like you can upload a picture. I can imagine it could be really cool to upload some sort of image related and then have them put notes on different parts of it, maybe to explain what they're seeing, or
that would be really cool. Yeah.
Like neurons or brains.
Exactly. We have the font. So attribution is we're going to see who posts what. Sometimes it's great to have it, and sometimes it just doesn't matter. So I do try to think about that when I'm building the Padlet. I usually want them to be able to comment, so I do that. And I've never used reactions, but now that Jennifer and I have talked about it, I am interested in reactions. So I don't want to click.
I had to drag my Zoom window out of the way so I could see what you were doing, just in case anybody else is stuck in that same spot. So I'm not sure in the recording whether the Zoom window will cover it or not. I've seen differences in some of my recordings. So
okay, we'll see. And then require approval or filter profanity. I think that with our students, at least so far, that hasn't been an issue. And I think requiring my approval when it's in class would just slow things down. But we've seen how it works for Jennifer. So we have that. And then I am going to start posting. It's all ready. I go down to this pencil down here in the bottom right-hand side. And it gives me a post. So I'm going to say, so my title is Kentucky Ice Storms Are Magnificent. And then I could just say, of course. So that's as much as I'm going to put there. But, I think maybe it's important to have an image of an ice storm. So I uploaded one today and I went ahead and put that image there. I can move it anywhere on this canvas, right? I could do it in the middle. I can move it over to the side. And then I got it started. I'm going to copy the link. I'm going to share it with my class. So what I'm going to ask my class to do is to go to the Padlet, and then you post something about ice storms. Do you love ice storms? Are they magnificent? How do ice storms make you feel? So your option would be either to make a new post or a new card and share your feelings about ice storms. Or if you want, you could just comment on Dr. Comley's post about ice storms. Either way, you're contributing to the class. Either way, if you've identified yourself and you have a free account with Padlet, it can count for your participation for the class, because we understand that sometimes by Zoom, it can be a little intimidating to participate. So as I would give my students a few minutes to share what they think, and my students are working on it. So the only way to get around an ice storm is to have yak tracks, which is so true. And so a student might say, I don't know what yak tracks are. So someone could go in and comment and say, there's spikes. There's spikes for your shoes. So then we can go in, and then that'll enlighten the students who don't know. We have someone who hasn't identified themselves. Yeah, ice storms make me feel very acutely that I live in the South. We rarely had ice storms growing up in Wisconsin. I know who it is now. So these are the kinds of things. So Christy added a meme or video. The cold never bothered me anyway. So, and you can see also that it's really quick, right? So this has been maybe 2 minutes. And I've had my whole class, even the students who've never used it before, were able really quickly to just get on board with it. And then of course their first post is anonymous, and they say, oh wait, I need to figure out how to get my name up there. So then they register for their free account. As long as
my students are have caught on that sometimes their things show up as anonymous, and so they know that they have to make sure I know that they posted. So then they'll come back and post again and write their name and arrow up to say that was me.
They want to make sure that you know. Yeah, absolutely. So that's just a quick way to see how we can use it in class. I'm really excited to do more of what Jennifer does and use it asynchronously, especially since my students are already using it in class. They're comfortable with the platform. So I think that there's a lot of ways I need to really think through what I do and see how I could use Padlet.
Part of why I did it asynchronously for the videos is because last semester I had them submit their videos in Moodle, and if you're using specifications grading and they do it over again, then it's hard to tell when there's a thing there. And so with Padlet, it's way easier to tell because you see it. So it's easier for me.
Is there a way to automatically organize the grid, or alphabetize by person and maybe check against a group of people to find out who posted?
I don't think alphabetize. There's the wall, or there's like a grid that just kind of packs things in a more organized way. But it wouldn't be alphabetical. It would be by the order in which they post. So you could choose that the most recent is first, or that the first post is first. So I don't think there's a way that you can alphabetize.
So can I kind of cross ask here for Jennifer, because I got into using Pear Deck a lot, both synchronously and asynchronously, and being able to ask them to submit warm-up type questions. And I see one big difference here is they wouldn't be able to see other people's responses asynchronously, but they could in the middle of class. Are there places where you definitely prefer this versus Pear Deck and vice versa?
So I used Pear Deck exclusively in the spring because I was teaching my classes asynchronously because I live in a rural area and my internet is a little iffy, and and some of my students had iffy internet in the spring from home. I have been using Padlet for most of the things that I do this fall. I would use in the fall and in the spring, this spring. But if I'm going to go to a conference in a few weeks, and I'm going to set up some pair decks for my students to do exercises with their teams. And so those things where they work through an activity together, I plan to use pair decks. They can't see each other's answers in pair deck the way they can in Padlet. And they like being able to see each other's answers. Some people would be like, what? Really, they could just copy each other. I'm like, well, I could see that they copied each other. That's not useful. And so, does that answer your question?
Somewhat.
Sort of.
Yeah.
It seems like this has the potential to be more collaborative than Pear Deck.
Yes.
Whereas Pear Deck seems like it's more kind of one way, like you're envisioning the flow and you're getting their feedback as you move through the flow that you've kind of set up and the order of the slides and the information and stuff like that. That's my sense, maybe.
I like Pear Deck because we could do it remotely, like clickers that are remote, and it could be synchronous or asynchronous. And there's a lot of value to the flexibility that it has. And so it's more like clickers, right? And so this is a different kind of space. This is like, oh, if you're going to do a muddiest point and you want them to write on an index card, but they're spread around the world, so you can use Padlet and they write their muddiest point on a card that shows up on my computer screen.
I've been using just setting up a Google Doc for things like that, and they collaborate and kind of branch off each other's points. They make a point, and it's all fairly well organized, based on the reading that we've done. This feels very scattered and hard. I'm wondering if another format like that, Shelf or something, would be that the same thing that I've kind of done in the Google Doc, and having it a bit more organized.
Yeah, this is the Canvas is very free flow, so it kind of depends on what you're discussing, but the grid or the wall would be the two. But I think if Google Docs working for you and it's working for your students, you probably have what you need. I mean, I think it depends on what you want to do with it. And if it's already working, I mean, I wouldn't want to add another platform if I had something that was working great.
It was nice because they respond with pictures or memes, or they put little, funny jokey things in there. And I was just kind of wondering if it was just text, but I mean, it looks like they could reply with just a separate post. And if it was organized, I guess you're right. I don't know if there's a firm advantage or not, but it's just, I'm just wondering.
I would just think, I mean, no need to complicate your life any more than it already is by the pandemic. So I can't look at a Google Doc without my head spinning when they get big. So I think that the Padlets work for me, and I've been able to mostly help my students, work well with the Padlets.
Allison, if that was your audition as a Padlet salesperson, I'm not sure.
No, but I should not sell anything ever or fundraise.
But I totally agree with you. Like there's a million ways to, if you want like a space where students can collaborate, there's Jamboard and Padlet and Google Docs and other things too. So you have to find one that makes sense for what you do, and then just go with it.
Right, because they get overwhelmed if you do too many technologies. When I added Padlet, I was like, well, we're not going to do Slack. And then my students were like, we need Slack. I'm like, oh, okay, we'll do Slack.
Well, Slack's still handy because sometimes they send you a quick message, and if you just want to chat without having to do the emails back and forth, like even during office hours, they'll Slack me during office hours instead of jumping on Zoom because they know I'm here. They know I'll answer.
It's a fast,
So.
easy way that they can share graphics, right? I have my students
too.
working in teams, and so they use their Slack channels to figure out when the team's going to meet and to share the graphics that they're making. And so, yeah, but you got to go with what feels comfortable. Some people like Google Docs or Jamboard and whatever. There's lots of ways.
Yeah. And then be consistent with the students, not change it too much and be like, oh, never mind, Padlet's just not. Like, just kind of commit to something for a while and, you know, let them get comfortable with it. And
Mine adapted to Padlet really quickly. After they were like, no, we want Slack. I'm like, well, do you want to do the reading warm-ups in Slack? They're like, no, we like Padlet. Okay.
yeah.
I've
Another
been
thing-
using,
Go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say, I've been using Flipgrid for, you know, they post short videos and then answer them. And I've just been having them use the text response, but actually you could do that with this too, but they would still have to upload the video to something to be able to do it. At least Flipgrid already has a platform. They can just,
So
yeah.
with the Padlet, they can upload the video or they can just put a link to it.
Yeah, but
They
they'd
can-
still have to have a video, a
Right.
platform. That video
Okay.
has to exist somewhere if they're going to record it of themselves. So
Yeah.
TikTok. That reminds me, I have a student who wants to do TikTok for her artifact. And she was like, well, how do I share it with you? And I was like, I don't know. You're the one doing it, TikTok, but I guess she could just put the link in a Padlet. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I have a TikTok account, but I don't get lost in it like the students do. I find it annoying more than anything else. So.
Yeah, I have students sent me a link through email, so they can always email it too.
Another way you can learn about cool things to do with Padlet is just to go in the gallery and just look at what other people have done. And that's where I got some cool ideas. And then you can like the things, so then you'll be able to find them again if they were inspiring to you.
It's a good idea.
You're inspiring to us, both of you.
Yeah, this has been super helpful. Thank you all.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks so
Really
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.